Hello and welcome to the Identity Podcast, brought to you by Find Your ID NYC. I'm one of your co-hosts, Caleb. How's it going? It's a quite a Wednesday, that's for certain. Along with my fellow lovely co-host Tyreek, who might actually have a cat in the future. How's it going, Tyreek?
It's going well, man. It's going perfect. No, we can do this all day. Good to see everyone. I hope everyone's doing really well. It's a Wednesday. We had our first snow day today. I don't know if you're in New York. It's pretty bad. It's awful. But I do love the snow. But we're very excited for today. And without further ado, we're going to introduce our guest, Reverend Ivy Rivera. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks, boys, for having me.
It's going to be a great episode. I'm very excited.
Yes, me too. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on, Ivy. It's such an honor. It's great. I'm already so fascinated. We were just talking a little bit before the show, and I was just so ready to hear all that you have to say. It's going to be a great show. I can already feel that. But don't forget to like us on Facebook at Find Your ID NYC and to follow us on Instagram by the same name. Check out our YouTube page at The X Shows. And don't forget, as always, to check out the Identity Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Amazon, Google Podcasts, Spotify, any podcast app out there. I promise you, we're on it. And don't forget to check out and follow our TikTok page at the Identity Podcast. Pretty cool stuff. But let's go ahead and once again reintroduce our guest for this week's show, Intuitive Capabilities, episode 19, featuring Ivy Rivera. It really is such a great honor to have you, Ivy. I'm very excited to hear all that you have to say. But I guess to kind of kick things off, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do and about the Academy and all that.
So I had the psychic, mediumistic, empathic abilities all my life. And I had been approached by a psychic medium from a town called Lilydale in New York. Okay, it's like one of the largest spiritualist communities in the world, right? So it's a town where mediums and psychics live and work. And a lady from there had found me in a grocery store and came up to me and said, "Are you aware that you have the ability?" And I said that I knew I had stuff going on, but I did not understand that I was able to do what they did. I did not understand that the random tidbits of psychic information I got and the accuracy of weird things, just predictions. I didn't know that meant I could sit down and actually give a reading to another person for like 30 minutes. At the time I had my first apartment, I really had nothing to lose. I was 15. I was very young. And she had, really encouraged me to step out and try to do it. She said that I had the ability and I really didn't need to know anything more than that. So she told me to take the next person I did not know and sit them down in a chair in front of me and just open my mouth and see what would happen. So this guy came to my apartment looking for my roommate, Berto. Berto wasn't there. He was at work. And so I didn't know this guy. So I brought him into my dining room. I sat him in a chair in front of me and I just opened my mouth, and for 45 minutes, it just came pouring out. I knew about his deceased loved ones that were coming through. I knew that he had his truck packed and he was ready to move to Arizona, but that his brother had just abandoned him. And so he was stuck taking care of his elderly grandfather. I was shocked. He was bawling. And then Berto came home and we just put the chairs away and, we acted like nothing had happened. And that was basically the extent of my training. And at that age, it was like opening up Pandora's box. And I wasn't trained properly in the structure that was needed, like things like discernment, how to tell the difference between light and dark energy, and the kinds of effects that feeding your intuitive abilities or having an increase in your intuitive abilities will have on your mental, emotional, physical well-being, the energy that I was putting out, and who would be attracted to me after that. I knew nothing about any of this, and no one internationally was training on what I needed to know. And so it would be until I was, 30 that Spirit really pushed me out. I had a degree in journalism and I was not at all willing to do any of this, but Spirit has a way. and it was my calling. And I knew at that point I needed to. So I had to put my journalism on hold. And at 30, I went out and I started reading for the public. And it just blew up overnight. Like in less than 4 months, it was a full-time business, and it had grown into a school. People were just coming to take classes. I wasn't even advertising. And I wanted to, what Spirit was showing me was that I was supposed to talk on all the things that I didn't receive. I was supposed to help people to understand that we're all the same, that we all have psychic ability and we don't know we're using it every day to stay alive. We all have mediumistic abilities, because whether you're a skeptic or not, Spirit doesn't care. Spirits are communicating with us all the time, and that affects us physically, mentally, emotionally, every time they do that. I didn't know enough about my empathic abilities and how that was leading to things like anxiety and depression and how that needed to be managed. And so, Spirit was showing me through the course of my life and all the hardships I had and all the amazing blessings that came along with these abilities, how to show other people to not just open up Pandora's box, like what happened to me, but how to manage it from where you are to make yourself better, and then to give it out to the world around you. And I realized that is the story for all of us, but it's also our roots. It's where we came from. It's what's been taken away by the patriarchy and the colonization, and we've been stripped of understanding that that's in all of us. And so I just believe that my calling is to bring it back. And so people who come in for the classes and things, I run a school called the Ivy League Psychic Academy, and people train in psychic mediumship, and now it's grown. So it's like numerology, astrology, tarot, you name it, Reiki. But people who come in are amazed that they don't even necessarily believe in this. And the very first class, they're giving readings by the end of it. So it's a lost language that I am trying to restore.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I feel that it's almost, because you said a mouthful, so we're gonna unpack some of those things. So let's just start from the top. First of all, awesome trajectory, and it's funny that you're saying down to 30. And I know we had said back to our demographics and where some people are in their lives right now. And 30 is this new transformative period for a lot of people. So I know we can definitely target that as well. But let me just pull back a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about, you said Lilyville. Why were you even in this random area? It almost sounds like a movie. Like someone just drops you in a forest and the owl spirit comes out of, you know what I mean? So where's Lilyville in New York, and how did you end up starting there to begin with? And how do you keep up with your mentor?
Well, and that's how it felt. It was very odd. Like, I was born in Georgia, and then I've spent my life moving around. And like for this period of time, like right around then, I was out on my own, living on the streets and finding my own way. And I was in a place that was like 20 minutes away from that spiritualist community. It was just very random. So yeah, like Lilydale is, they are the founders of the spiritualist religion, which I'm not a part of, and I don't associate necessarily or identify with any of that. But, without places like this, how would we know anything about, psychic and mediumistic abilities and how a whole community of people can come together? So it was this amazing opportunity that I had to be, pretty much right outside the gates of that community, and to have answers to how I was, why I was the way that I was. And while my family knew that I had things going on, and the school was always sending me off to doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists, and I was always being ran through a gauntlet of tests, nobody could ever find anything. No one ever knew. I was never diagnosed with mediumship. And so that medium finding me from that town in a grocery store, like 20 minutes away, was an absolutely defining moment. And then it was basically like right after I met her and all that happened, I just packed up and moved off to New York City and started moving around again. So I just feel like I was right there in exactly the right time to show me what was really going on. And to, it was almost like whetting my palate to have a deeper curiosity about whether or not we're all doing this and we didn't know.
Wow, that's beautiful. And we always have our taglines, right, Caleb? We come back to the words identity, and we have those circling around. And you've hit a lot of our key points already so early. So I would just highlight that for some of the guests if you didn't pick up on it. But she said curiosity is one aspect of your identity. And also just being receptive, just in that particular aspect, because could you imagine you're in the grocery store, AKA you're in the aisle of your own separate life, and these synchronicities kind of arise, if I'm not mistaken, Ivy, and it's up to you to rise to that occasion. And even then, her full calling didn't come to much later. So it's very interesting to see each steps of how we kind of get there. So I'm curious to see all of those people that are kind of on the cusp or the fringe, not to be too punny, of certain things. Where would you feel like they should start along their journey? Because I wanted to ask as well, like what religion was your family before you entered into this, and kind of where was that space before the inception of some of these more spiritual things?
So, like so many other people, I'm mixed. So my family is from Puerto Rico. So we're Taino Arawak. Yeah.
Shout out to the natives.
Yeah.
All indigenous families.
Which is a lot of the foundation
Indeed.
of religions like voodoo and,
Exactly.
but, again, with like my grandmother, my understanding is that my grandmother was, we were told she was a wild woman. I now know she was a slave. And so there was a lot of hidden, and then when my grandparents came over to America in 52, they really wanted everybody to acclimate. So, they had 9 kids, and it was like, go into the military, speak English, go to church. So everything became very Catholic and very structured. And then my mother so the other half of my family is white, and that was also Catholic. And so I was just sort of stuck, I was stuck. But both sides of my family were very spiritual. And I do believe that increased mediumistic abilities run in the bloodline, as do empathic, abilities. And so it was always there and it was discussed, but it was something I wasn't allowed to talk about at school or at church. And I started to notice, and I would say this is the beginning of figuring out my own identity, sitting in church and having such a peaceful feeling, and then being told that communicating with Jesus or the Holy Spirit directly could be demonic, or there was something dark there. I started to think this isn't matching. Like, who's buying this? This doesn't even fit. how can you say one thing and then say, life continues, that the Holy Spirit exists in all of us, and then we can't access it, or it's mine. So I would just question things. I was like, this isn't right. This isn't
right. And this is very early, right?
Well, yeah. And I would listen to the teachers and the adults, because I went to Catholic school for a while, and I would think they're contradicting themselves. Do they think this is true? And I started to pay attention for my own self. Where did I want to take guidance? Am I going to take it from the school? Am I going to take it from the church? Am I going to take it from society or my parents? Or am I going to take it from spirit? And so what I did was I paid attention to whether or not the things that spirit were giving me, if it was good, if it was helpful, if it made me feel good, if it helped me to elevate my life. And it did. So I tuned them out and I listened here instead. And that's sometimes easier said than done. But I would say that was the beginning. And I think that's where everybody needs to be. I think that, because we all have these abilities, it's not a choice, it's innate, it's just there. Whether you feed it or not is a choice. But because we all have them, I would encourage people to start paying attention to, Tyreek, like you mentioned earlier, synchronicities. Pay attention to the way the world, the universe is interacting with you all the time through numbers and people and thoughts that pop into your head and songs, and especially in the bathroom. Okay, so that's a native belief that the bathroom is a huge activator for intuition because of the water and the porcelain and the mirrors. And so it's embarrassing and weird, but it activates in there. So what kind of thoughts are you having? When you're in the bathroom or you're showering, premonitions, and keep a journal. Watch for patterns. And then I would always recommend, I did this great little free mini class. Go up onto my YouTube at Ask Ivy. I did a class during the pandemic called, Are You a Psychic, a Medium, or an Empath? And while we're all three, there are definitely degrees. And I think that has helped people to figure out, okay, I fit mostly into this category. What does it mean? And what should I look at next? And if you have that next step in front of you and you're brave enough to take it in blind faith, it will lead to other steps afterward.
That's awesome. And what was that YouTube link again? So we can have them all jump in.
So my YouTube is at Ask Ivy. And then if they go into the playlist, they could see all the free mini classes I've been putting up since the pandemic, one per week. And the class I'm referring to is called, Are You a Psychic, a Medium, or an Empath? And so that can help people to sort of categorize what they have going on.
Indeed. And that's awesome. That brings me to the next segue. So now we've kind of gotten them open to what the aspect of what this may be, you know, kind of getting past the ideas of shadow working and light working. And it kind of seems a lot of like, it goes back to this curiosity thing. And I wanted to kind of segue that with your classes in the sense that what inspired you to keep learning more, or realizing that, you know, upon this thread, which originally, because I actually have Christian ancestry as well, but also have Muslim and also some spiritual stuff and a little Buddhism. So I'm a mutt when it comes to religion. So I understand when some people may be a little adverse to jumping into something so different. And honestly, it seems like to me, it's explained more sometimes than some of the faith-based Christianity ideals. Not to say that I have completely abandoned some of that, because I do think a lot of what we spoke about earlier as far as psychology and human interaction with each other has a lot to do with kind of that Christ consciousness that we are identifying. And I think that is something a lot more cosmic as well. So we can delve into that as well. But speaking of that Christ consciousness, I think that, you know, given, I guess, just these years that we've been on since the age of Pisces and all this other fun stuff, I believe that it has become more commonplace to agree with this idea. And I just want to second the fact that, yes, we do all have it, and we do all have that ability. And I think at some point even in your mentors, or the one that spotted your original spiritual capabilities, it became this like very occult, almost witchy type of thing. And it was a very small section of people, and it's very pedigree based and knowledge based, and some people are very specialists in tarot and all this other stuff. But now we're living in a world where all the mediumship can kind of come to a synergy. So that's my full question, and how you taught other spiritualists to get to where they are as well. So how have you been learning? How do you teach, and how does it keep growing?
Well, I feel like it really just began for my own survival, you know, because as intuitive intelligence increases and you eventually realize you can't block it all the time and it cannot be reversed, it will eventually just sort of build up in your body and start to cause all kinds of disorders. And so I think that was the beginning of my journey, was being in like kindergarten and sent off to go see doctors. And I love psychology too, right? Like I was going for a degree in that before journalism, you know, and nobody being able to find anything, but always being labeled and categorized as having problems. And so, you know, they had told my mother at one point, I was in kindergarten, they had said, Ivy cashes out. And when the room is moving around a lot, because she's okay at the desk when we're sitting and learning, but when we start to move around and have playtime, she sits in a chair and she cashes out, and she can't like hear us. She's not responding to us. And that was happening because when there was a lot of movement, I would get excited and they would put me in the corner and say that I was getting aggressive, but I didn't know that. I was just feeling too much energy. Mm-hmm. And I was damned if I did, I was damned if I didn't. And so I would tune out of my head. So they took me to all these doctors and ran me through all these tests. They said everything came up negative, you know, bipolar, this, that, the other. But this was the 80s, right? So I was diagnosed, okay, with melancholy, that I was melancholy. And there were always questions, you know, every year there was a new issue. And so that was the big one. And then I completely, even though I loved reading and writing, from before the time I knew words, I would illustrate my own books and I would bind them. And I was all about publishing. But when I was in the second grade, I completely lost my ability to read and write. And I had been straight A's. And it completely left, and I had to go to a special school to get it back. And I found over the years that happens to a lot of empaths when they hit the third and the fourth levels with their empathic ability. And now the medical field and the science behind it doesn't back any of that, because they will not acknowledge invisible energies. They will only acknowledge energy from people and objects. So there were these things that would happen to me that just did not make sense. And why could no doctor explain what was happening with me? So it became a journey of figuring it out for my own sanity and my own well-being, because no one could help. And then, you know, when I started offering the readings to the public, it was immediate. Like you said, that Tyreek, you said something about there being like it's almost like a small niche of people, and it became kind of almost a culty feel. You know, that I never fit in with that either. And when I started offering, you know, the readings to the public, I had clients immediately who were starving and begging me to teach them how to do it because they said they were afraid. And they were afraid also of ridicule and criticism, and that they would be told that they don't have the abilities, they would humiliate themselves in some way. And I'm just always very willing to humiliate myself because, you know, I was embarrassed my entire life. So I just thought, that's silly. Like, we can't let that happen. So I said, okay, then we'll do it in private and we'll talk about what's really going on. And I realized that a lot of their fears were based on that sort of culty hierarchy, that this is a gift, this is special, it's generation after generation, it's political, they're getting a lot of cash from that mentality. And I just broke it down and it just exploded. So
that's amazing.
People were ready. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I'm speechless at that, because I think a lot of people don't, I guess we're getting like, this is like a very advanced identity podcast, but a lot of people don't put up their own wards or spiritual wards of protection at that level. So, and I think a lot of it, what you said, is also very tangible, even though we may not acknowledge these, you know, much more outside spiritual things, you know, good sleep or because these are all subconscious attacks. Like some people that have insomnia, or you mentioned anxiety or bipolar, or other much westernized, you know, just straight up Freudian, like, you know, you want to be with your mom type of stuff, basically. Don't we all want to go back into the fetal position? Let's be honest. Right. But so, you know, these much bigger things that we have to deal with can have a lot to do with something that is so outside of ourselves, and there's no help. And so I can imagine how overwhelming it can be. We actually had a question from someone that's on right now that said, let me read it correctly. How does she incorporate what she learned in her journey? I think we kind of tackled that a little bit. And how do you process the overwhelming energies? So this is someone that's kind of along the same path as what you're saying, probably along their journey, and they just need to learn how to protect themselves, I guess, as their abilities are growing.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned the sleep and the anxiety and the depression and things like that, because when your intuitive intelligence is growing all the time, and it will, okay, there is no way to reverse that. We have many triggers that cause increases, and then my belief is that we increase naturally every 5 to 6 years. So with every increase, especially ladies, if you got pregnant, you had a baby, I mean, that's a huge one. Someone in your circle died, even if your dog died, all of these, okay, tragedy right now with the pandemic, everyone's on fire, everyone's ears are ringing, everybody has tinnitus, no one's sleeping anymore, everyone has anxiety disorders. Why is this? It's this. It is this. When you have intuitive intelligence increasing, and it's like, you know, the medical science, everything just isn't keeping up. And Big Pharma would probably prefer to keep it that way. We have misdiagnoses going out. Now, I cannot prescribe or diagnose. However, I have had countless people come to me over the years, therapists, teachers, you know, doctors, and say, what are you teaching here? Because my client, my patient, my student is finally well. And I had one doctor, he was fantastic. He came in and he said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm teaching them about how to control the energy that they allow in, and how to properly put it back out, and how to sometimes block so that nothing is getting in, and how to know the difference. And he said, well, I love this. I wish I could say what you say. And he said, but I say this to my patients all the time. He said, and that is that you cannot expect to go out and eat 12 Big Macs and not go to the bathroom or get sick or gain weight And he said, this is what we're all doing. We're all over absorbing energy, and it just builds until it's anxiety disorders and it's ADHD and it's depression. And a lot of people felt better in the pandemic because when we were isolated, we were no longer absorbing from other people. So for a lot of people, anxiety and depression and ADHD disappeared. Okay, so this is yet another piece of the proof that I'm talking about. And so I pushed for a long time, like 8 years, to get a class I developed called Empathic Awareness Training into the school systems. And last year we got into school systems. We also had teacher credits. I am now starting to work in a prison system. We brought it into universities. So last year was a huge opportunity for people to be receptive, and like yoga and meditation and mindfulness kind of led the way in the last years. And so those of you who are listening to this and you're saying, oh, I really struggle with the energy, like something is not right. That's where you would want to start. It's called Empathic Awareness. And it's up on my website, Ivy Rivera, empathiceducator.com. And yeah, we have it for protesters and activists and teachers, people who deal with burnout, those on the front lines. I mean, you name it, it can be modified. It's modified for children. And it's basically teaching us at a really simple, like fundamental level, how to be mindful, how to sit still with yourself, and to identify when something is off, figure out where it came from, and get rid of it. So it's really not hard, but no one talks about it.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, and this is why, platforms like this and what you're doing matters so much, because now people have a community to come to kind of get some of this information. So definitely check out some of her classes. I'm sure she'd be down for a call, some quick consultations as well. Hit her up as well in that aspect. But a lot of this, I do feel like what you've described is something that you had to learn as well. And I think that's another thing that we speak about that can't be taught, kind of like the energy thing. It's a little bit of this perseverance and a little bit of just having that trust within yourself to get past like some of these things that may not be described by other people in your immediate family or your friends or peers, or you may not have access to someone like Ivy. And I think, or the funds to do it, or whatever it may be. But just believe that Spirit is directly talking to you, and that's where that's coming from. So a lot of dissonance sometimes comes from the lack of receptiveness. So I wanted to ask, along those diagnoses that we described, you described melancholy, which I think is very funny. Obviously it's not funny for those that have experienced that dull ache of depression their entire lives, especially throughout puberty, which I've understood as well. But I've come to understand it as, and this is more of a question posed to you as well, Ivy, and maybe Caleb too, if you want to jump in. How much does that feeling of melancholy have to do with our innate intuitive abilities not achieving its purpose, or being along the lines of opening up to, higher levels that we may not feel that we're ready for?
Right. Maybe they wouldn't have had to send me off to doctors and figure out why I was melancholy when they had put me in a corner and trapped me in a chair and told me that talking to spirit was evil. Maybe I would not have had to feel that way if there was any adult giving me permission to just be who I was. So it was a long, dirty journey getting back to that, long, hard. But I think it's exactly that. It's that we're told from so many different angles, and it has been going on for so long now, that entertaining intuition is a gateway to hell, or it's a gateway to mental illness, or it's punishable. And that's backed up. Society backs that up. Your parents, your school, your church, the medical centers, they will back that up. And so just even coming out and doing this kind of work and what it did to my journalism career, I mean, it's brutal. It's just brutal. So it's sort of like, I think what people need to understand is that if we all go along on this journey collectively, if we can all just get on the same page, it's going to be a lot easier. But when we're all just kind of doing it here and there, and everyone's like fearful and closeted and, acting like it's something dark, then you're perpetuating the problem. Get free. There's nothing wrong with us. even people who I can sit next to, whether I'm in like infirmaries, they're dealing with like dementia, or there's like schizophrenia, or there's, you know, all kinds of things going on. I can sit with those people. I understand what they're hearing. You know, I've entertained my abilities enough. I know when they're hearing from spirits, and I know when they're hearing from their psychic ability. I know when they're telepathically picking up on others around them. There's nothing wrong with it. We need to be careful. We need to, own ourselves for sure, accountability, but to mislabel it for this long has caused what we see out in society today. And that is a numb, zombie-like group of people who just don't know who they are and where they're going. And this is such a part of who we are. When we cut ourselves off from this, we literally lose our humanity.
Wow. And that's hard, given what people have been going through this year, and anyone that's struggling in a very physical space. We reach out to everyone that way. But I do feel there's a lot of oppression and suppression of spirituality. And you did shoot out to Big Pharma in that aspect. I think a lot of it is not in Western medicine's best interest to continue to move forward with that stuff. I wanted to talk a little bit about nutrition as well, because you had talked about that very briefly. But that's honestly why I started to eat a lot healthier and focus on the vitamins I didn't take in my body. Different metals to get out of your body. So that's why I've been practicing veganism. Everyone, if you ever mattered, ever cared, but I do think it has helped my my overall mental health as well as my spiritual health as I've been doing it. Not to act like the biggest hipster vegan in the world, but yeah, that's usually why I do it, because I have felt that a lot of simple sugars have messed me up. I forgot how much water I needed to drink. So I've been very, very much on that for the last 2-3 years. So that matters. I wanted to, well, Caleb, you have a question. If you have a question, I wanted to pull up a quick picture really quick. So forgive me while I move this.
Well, not necessarily just a question, but also just kind of a segue. I think I know something that Ivy and I talked about before the show, and I think would be great to kind of segue into now, is this normalizing intuition. And this is a big point that she really specializes in. And I think there's a lot that she has to say. So I think with what we're talking about, we're really able to dig in even deeper now by moving into that. But we'll let Tyreek show his picture real quick, and then we can go ahead and get into that. We did have a few comments. One person, Kaylee, said that makes so much sense. I never thought about absorbing energies like that. It's totally like a sponge.
Oh, yes.
I love that. It's really great. And we had a few people saying that we're looking great, so that's great as well. Don't forget, you are listening and watching the Identity Podcast right here on Find Your ID NYC's Facebook page. Don't forget to like us on Facebook by Find Your ID NYC, and follow us on Instagram by the same name, and check out our YouTube page at the X Shows. Looks like Tyreek has got his photo coming up. You good, Tyreek?
Also, shout out to the t-shirts and stuff. We have some fun stuff there. This is my favorite. It's Protect Our Queens, because I feel like our women are the strongest spiritual people in the world. Shout out to all of our indigenous matriarchs out there killing it. So yeah, it's really this is more of a question to shift gears. I know we've kind of been belaboring some stuff. We'll get back to in a second, but I wanted to hear your thoughts on, since we brought up this very big topic of Western medicine versus what's really going on. So that's kind of like the segue where I wanted to go. So I'm not sure what you can see right now. Okay, you can see this. You see the Google image search? So I wanted to bring these up. I don't know if anyone's familiar with them. I found out about this like a little while back. I don't know how much I kind of like believe in it. I know a lot of people that have done psychedelics or experienced very higher levels of consciousness is what I like to describe it as. Obviously, those are gateways. You can do it through meditation. But have explained auras and how energy works in a much more like tangible setting. So I wanted to bring some stuff that wasn't so pseudo, even though I love pseudo stuff. I'm all about psychology and writing and stuff, but maybe some more like physical examples of kind of what we've been talking about. So to Kaylee's point, these big sponges that we're talking about are honestly around us in a bit of an aura situation. So what are your thoughts on this, Ivy?
Well, first of all, I love what you said about veganism. And I think that for those of you watching who notice that, it kind of goes like this, like your dreams get really wild and then all of a sudden you don't want to eat certain things, or you're thinking more about animals, you're being more conscious about your body, food is medicine. And then it's like, I don't want to drink anymore. I'm able to quit smoking for the first time, or I don't want to pop those pills or go off with those people anymore. That's kind of where it starts. It's like those key areas. And I did too for 16 years, and I raised all 3 of my kids vegetarian. I did fall off the wagon and eventually go back, but I'm still very careful about that. It really is about taking care of ourselves and what that does to our energy fields, right? So they say that like the way you feel today is what you ate yesterday. I like totally believe that. So we live in a society that's like garbage food and preservatives and this and that. So, and then we have so many communities where people can't access fresh food. And we need to get back into all of that connection with nature and natural food and respect of animals. And so it absolutely affects us. And it's typically, in relation also to like big pharma and things, people who have diagnoses that may be accurate, they may not be accurate. When you're popping pills all the time, and I can't prescribe or diagnose, when you're doing that, you're stifling. So it's just like eating junk food. We still deal with the energy. We still need to get to the root of what is going on. There is no magic pill for intuition. It's not an illness, So we really want to think of it as a mind, body, soul type of a thing. And when you showed the pictures of the auras, I love that, because one of the things I talk about in the empathic awareness training is to think of it like an aura. Everybody's heard that word, right? So like an aura goes out. Well, that's your energy field. If you have a big aura, okay, especially now, Tariq, with like the veganism and everything, that means your aura probably went from being right about here to like here, or radiating out further. So the healthier you get, the further out you radiate. And that means that as people come closer to you, they don't need to get in right up next to you before you start being impacted by them. So that their energy field touches your energy field, you start to think what they're thinking, feel what they're feeling. You start over absorbing their stuff. You could literally stop being you, and it's almost like you lose your mind and you become them. It's just the way that it is. And we do the same thing with atmospheres and objects.
Wow.
So, and then we've got spirits interacting all the time. So there's just so much going on that we have not identified. And we really do need to think in terms of, what we're putting in and how good we're doing at putting energy back out to clear, and how far out this thing is going. How close in do people need to be to you? That's a big thing. And I've been talking about that a lot on my TikTok lately, is that people don't need to be touching you, right? A lot of people want this, especially those who live in New York City, and I get it. Oh yeah, well, if I could have an arm's reach from people, make an arm's reach. Make it a priority that you are not letting people be right up on you all the time. Stand instead of sit. Give space. Again, this is why a lot of people are feeling better in the pandemic, because not only have we been quarantined, so we see who we really are. Who am I actually? What is my energy field? What is my personality actually when it's not influenced? But also we have to keep 6 feet.
Wow.
So it's healthy. Yeah. We're starting to figure out what's going on.
Right. Wow. Wow, that's some big jewels you just dropped there. That's amazing, Reverend Ivy. I think that's awesome. It's so funny when you started saying that, it just started clicking for me as well. I'm just like, it's like they have knowledge of this. We've obviously heard about aliens. We've heard about everything crazy within the last year or two, and yet there's still so much like suppression about it. But it's so funny. I wonder sometimes how much of it is just not necessarily the coronavirus, but how much of it is sometimes a very spiritual thing as well. And that they're just like, all right, we're just going to tell them 6 feet. It's arbitrary. We don't want to tell them why, because your aura naturally goes up 6 feet. Obviously that may not be what it is, but that's just something to think about, that, obviously they're not telling us everything. And it kind of goes back to that niche-y, culty, occultic type feeling. And I think as long as it's esoteric, and which basically just means it's hidden knowledge, obviously it's going to sound like shadow work. But when you're just like, oh yeah, when you eat vegetables, your gut feels better, so you're happier. You know what I mean? it's a lot easier to think about. I mean, she definitely describes, and there are levels to this. I do not mean to simplify what's going on. And also anyone that's dealing with nefarious spirits that are generational, or certain places that you reside in that may have some sort of spiritual taint or something there. And there's obviously much deeper things going on that some people don't have to deal with, or anyone that's dealt with a very significant trauma, i.e. rape or physical abuse and things that are generational like that you're like, wow, my grandmother went through this and my grandmother's grandmother went through this. So, those things matter a lot too. So I definitely don't mean to simplify what's going on, but I do think the small works that we're doing does matter to get to there. And so I definitely feel like with counselors and reverends like Ivy, which I did want to get into as well, since I'm on that idea. So you said you don't really practice what the Lilydale Valley practice. So how would you describe it? What you practice completely?
Well, I'm actually in the process of establishing right now. We launched January 3rd, a church. I don't know how often I'll be referring to it as a church. I don't care for that term a lot, but right. It is a church. It is a place where every week we will be offering services at night. So 8 p.m. Eastern. It's going to go on a podcast on my YouTube and this and that. When COVID passes, I just purchased a funeral home on the waterfront in New York State here, and we do have a chapel in there. So I'll be opening it back up to the public along with the school and all of that once COVID is a little bit more secure. I'm thinking June or July. But I had to establish a religion because I literally can't find anyone talking about what this is. I would have been happy to be a denomination under something else. But for example, the NSAC church, the spiritualist religion, you can't identify with Christ. So people are not here. Can't identify with anything. The belief there is that there is universal law, which I agree with. And there's life after death. The energy cannot die. It just transforms, which I agree with, of course. But I have found that through my teachings, I get all walks of life. I get voodoo, hoodoo, witchcraft, men, women, old, young. It does not matter. Everybody wants to come. And I just don't feel like it's my job to put a label on it. I think it's my job to teach them to pay attention to the energy, and that will lead them to their truth. That will help them on their journey, and that will help them heal past life, current, future problems. So that's all I'm here to do. And the only way that I have really found truth and honesty in any, pieces of religion, it's always come through numerology. There's truth. Astrology, there's truth. And intuitive intelligence, that's psychic, mediumistic, and empathic ability. So when I put those three together, I was able to design a religion based on tapping into those wisdoms and having all the answers and healing that you need in life, to have the support that we came here with, and to tap back in a way where we don't have to go to somebody to tell us. We don't have to go to a priest or pastor to access it for us. We don't have to go to a reader or a doctor or a healer. You can just do it within yourself if you learn how to utilize these truths. And so that's starting, January 3rd is going to be our first service at 8.
Shout out. That's awesome.
And it's, our astrologer at the Academy, I've known her forever. She's a brilliant astrologer, focusing on Western. And then we have Danny Johnson, who's a spiritual activist and reformer who teaches numerology. And then Paul Casey, Healing Arts, who sort of, does a lot of it, and tarot as well. And then I'm covering the psychic, empathic, and mediumistic. And we're just going to talk on everyday topics, sort of like a round table, and invite the parishioners, people from our ministry that are there for it to engage also, so they can ask questions. And we're just going to take the time to delve into what works in the everyday. Right.
Wow. That's awesome. That's very awesome. I guess my question would be then, how does one start? How does one begin? So now I've kind of gone through this, this metamorphosis of figuring out that I can also, talk to spirits and fly and shoot electricity from my hands. And so now I want to create a business to make someone else do it as well. How did you start? I know it's not everyone's story, and given this year of what's been going on, as crazy as it may be, this is maybe more of a time for you than anything. So who knows why Spirit told you to do it a year ago, so that you would probably be prepared for 2021. But and then the other thing also, there's probably online services as well. I know that you won't have people physically coming in, but I'm sure your community is going to be there for sure. But I say all that to say, so how do entrepreneurs in the spiritual field begin their journey? I mean, if you do want to talk about it, I know everyone's entrepreneurial story is so different, but
well, and I do readings. I do something called life contract readings. So people can always book a life contract reading with me where I look at literally what you signed on to before you came to Earth. Because if you don't have light work in that, if you're not here as a healer, like you boys are here as healers through speech and media and this and that, if you didn't have that in your life contract, you wouldn't be going anywhere. You'd be treading water. You could have 50,000 certifications and crusted yourself in crystals every day and drinking all the teas. And it's not going to work. You have to stay in your lane. You have to understand what you're here to do. And right now what we're seeing is a lot of people just flocking to light work and getting certifications and trying to go out there and do it. And it's not working for them and they don't know why. Because there are so many different forms of light work, you have to think outside the box. Don't try to label yourself traditionally with what you've been told there is, right? Psychic, mediumship, Reiki. Like you have to go beyond that. Maybe you're supposed to be starting up, some kind of an advocacy program. Maybe you're supposed to be working in activism. Maybe you're supposed to, do what you guys are doing with like a podcast and spread the enlightenment. There could be a million different variations of this, but I say get started. I say start paying attention to those synchronicities. And one of the easiest things I tell my students and clients is to go back, go in and think of who you were when you were 4, 5, 6, 7 years old and what you were passionately driven to do, how you felt about other people and the earth and the animals. What did you feel was going to be your contribution before it all got tainted and blocked up and washed away? What was that? And I don't care how simple it is to be able to sort of journal on that and to allow your work guide. Okay. Your work guide was appointed to you before you came to Earth. Your work guide also watches over your life contract. Talk to your work guide for like 10 minutes every day with your morning cup of coffee and just be like, can you show me what I'm supposed to do today to start working toward it? And they will just tell you and show you and lead you. This is not a system we have to do alone. So I think the process itself is a lot easier. It's just that first step. And that is definitely tying in with your guides. And we have a class on that also. It's called Meet Your Guides. That's up on my website. And to keep it simple and do not try to fit in with the category of what everyone else has done in supposed light work, because a lot of it isn't even that anyways.
Right. That's so true. Yeah, I think a lot of this has to go with trust. I mean, trusting yourself and having knowledge of yourself and knowledge of the environment. And I think this year more than ever, everyone that's watching and listening has been a tried and true. So I definitely encourage you guys to check out some of those questions that she just said and challenge yourself. Definitely journaling. The first time I came up with journaling, Ivy made a joke earlier. She was like, "You're the dreams guy, right?" So my Instagram has been Lucid Dreams for some time. And that's when I first kind of like was a bit of interested in journaling. So for my background as well, I've also kind of had very spiritual parents. I've explained that too. I don't know if anyone else on the podcast remembers, or my mom is watching actually probably, and my dad. But I came from two very spiritual intuitives who were like leaders in their own right. Ironically, different factions of religion, which has kind of put me at the semblance to understand how all of them connect. But I think that what is being told is that we have the power within ourselves, and we have to trust these abilities and trust some of those voices. And not everything is shadow work. Sometimes it's your spirit guide, like, get out of there. And you're like, why are you talking to me, demon? You know what I mean? And it's like, and I've heard a lot of people, and that goes back to something you described as discernment, which is an ability I learned actually in the Christian religion more than any of the other ones. I don't really hear a lot about discernment in New Age spiritualism, quote unquote. It's a lot of just like pre-hippie love type thing and not understanding the boundaries of certain spectrums of light and stuff. So Yeah, that was just my comments. Yeah.
Breaks down a lot of the other avenues that people are falsely pushing, like law of attraction and manifestation.
Oh, my favorite.
And and so it's sort of like, you know, the Bible and the brilliant things that were removed from the Bible in the Old Testament. Like the books of Solomon had trainings for mediums. You had to be 40 years old, and then you were trained as a seer, you were trained as a prophet, you were trained as a medium. All that was taken out. Well, it's sort of like that's where we are right now in life, right? And so if we come out and we say, look, not everything is shadow work, and we start to say, you know, some of this, you know, we need to identify where the gaps are, that's going to take things down, like law of attraction and a lot of what's been discussed, where the blame is still, you know, the victim is still being blamed. It's right. You know, you're attracting this. Well, you caused that. You caused that. No, like for example, when you have empathic ability, especially at the 3rd and the 4th levels, research shows that we attract narcissists and sociopaths more than any other group of people. So you tell me how these wonderful healing people are attracting such bad luck. That's not how law of attraction operates. Energy is energy. And it's not just like you put out energy, therefore you attract it back. You can also put out energy, and those that are starving for that energy will come. And so there is so much more to this, and nobody wants to talk about the discernment elements because it's not quick cash. Wow. Or they know it, or they're tied up in those other ideas that just aren't true. They're not entirely false, but they're just not the whole picture.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I mean, I know we didn't directly tackle the entrepreneur, or we did kind of, but I just love your spirit in the fact that like you're monetizing something that you really care a lot about, and you're also not hitting anyone over the head. You have a community that you've invested in, and you're continuing to build. And I just, you know, just kudos to you for everything you've been doing, for sure. I think that, you know, that matters. That matters more than anything. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to just take people's money, quote unquote, in the Bible, they call them soothsayers, quote unquote. Was the word that was quite used in the King James Version. But yeah, going back to that particular aspect, you had mentioned something about numerology. And if we start asking and looking into things of the Torah and all the Sephirots and all those deep things in the Kabbalah, most of that is numbers. And most of that have a lot to do with just how to move through life. A lot of this is symbolic. And some people will follow it to the T, when I do feel like some things are very allegorical. I'm not going to, you know, get my head chopped off by all of our community. I'm not saying everything is allegorical, but I do feel like specifically with numerology and numbers and tarot, the Bible does reference certain moon cycles and certain sun cycles and certain things that, and these are things that have been a part of religion for a while. So I do understand, given the transformation of what's happened into monotheistic religions, how we've kind of lost sight of ourselves in a sense. And I think that what I was gonna kind of ask is, have you ever had anyone come at you for the idea of blasphemy, in a sense? Because you answered it in a good way by saying like never, right? No, you answered it in a great way by saying basically to the extent of, you know, we're not God, because I do know some people that do believe that we are gods and that we move along that. But what you're describing is that we're much more empowered, which I do feel like is a lot, you know, it doesn't break that threshold of like, I'm controlling everything that's coming to me, every ex-boyfriend, girlfriend, and issues that have been happening. You know, sometimes, like you said, it is a victim mentality. I have heard that the empowering aspects of being like feeling like a goddess or feeling like a god does kind of, you know, move in a certain way. But there's obviously always such a higher deity and levels to that. So I've never seen it as blasphemy personally, but I'm just curious, is that something you've experienced? Yeah.
I mean, I moved 2 years ago, and I kept my address totally hidden, and I still got hate mail. I was shocked at like people are finding me, like people find me for this. You know? So, yeah, it's nuts. I mean, it's all the time. It's every day. You get into this field, and a lot of people think this is like fun, you know, or people think it's, you know, like
I'm sure they think so. Yeah.
Working with the spirits and angels and this, and it is a battle every day, 24 hours a day. You have a true calling in this. You are under attack all the time, and you have to fight those battles. You have to know how to protect yourself, and you have to trust. I move by blind faith every moment and trusting that because I am doing what I'm supposed to do and I am being of service, that I will be protected. But I also have a huge responsibility to protect myself, to protect the movement, to protect the people that I help. And it is a constant battle. Most people who, get into light work, again, if they're not struggling a lot, they may not be going very deep. And so, again, if you find that you've had a harder life, I know you're asking earlier about the entrepreneurship. If you find that you're having a harder life than others, I think the mark of a true light worker is abuse in childhood, neglect, ostracized by society, being marginalized, being a minority, being whatever it is. The abuse starts immediately. The fight begins, and it really doesn't ever let up. There are just levels. And I think that while we're all supposed to be tapping into this for obvious reasons, I don't think that everyone is necessarily called to go back out and teach it. And I think that when I love too that you were just talking about goddesses and gods and us becoming our own god and what is blasphemy. I think that one of the elements that people are missing so much, and this comes up again in numerology and astrology, as well as, the psychic mediumship, is that we have two futures. We have two potentials. We have destiny charted future, but we also have free will future. And this is what people are missing. So people either seem to feel today that they are like a feather in the wind. I think of Tom Hanks in, what was that movie he did? Forrest Gump, and the feather is just like
right.
People feel like they're either out at sea, just casted, like at the mercy of the universe, or they feel
all movies. Castaway, Forrest Gump, just shouting off all of it. They're all the same actor, right?
I love him so much. He's a god. He's a god in himself.
Yeah, he's the man.
He's something else. But or people think they're like an Avenger, they think they're like some kind of superhero. And it's like, all right, everybody needs to calm down, okay? It's a little bit of both. It's like there are things that are set in stone that are destiny charted. You can see it in your life contract. You can see it in numerology. You can see it in your astrological charts. But what you do with those destiny charted opportunities is up to your free will. And that dictates karma. That dictates what the payout and the prosperity will look like and how well you'll be doing. So it is both. And wow. I think that people sometimes have trouble, and those that attack me and things like that, they can't sort of hold two ideas at once. And so
they'll get used to it. They'll get used to it. Right. And I also feel like, if you're doing something right, you are going to cause waves. I've just noticed that too. When we first started, a lot of people were just watching just to see what we were doing. And it's become something more than we even expected. We didn't think we were going to do this on religion series. This has been like the most phenomenal thing we've done for 2020. So I appreciate all the support. Everyone's been doing it. Caleb's been hanging in there doing some stuff. So definitely send him some love too. But yeah, so yeah, a lot of this is just like you said, finding these rifts between what is reality and what someone else has projected as their own reality. And, a lot of people, especially I'm from a big city, have had issues with this isolation and figuring it out for themselves. As much as you have like a template, and I'm sure there's like, there's outlines for everyone, and like the knowledge of it has definitely helped along the path. But a lot of it is work. And a lot of people don't want to do that work, changing certain mentalities or having to stand up to certain ideals. I've had to, explain myself to my parents. I know a lot of people that have experienced that, coming out. We did a gender series as well, have experienced that, changing their identity in front of their parents. And it's a lot to it. And I think that the biggest aspect is kind of like setting yourself as the litmus test for what you feel about and how you feel about these things, because it may not have anything to do with anyone else, And I think that sometimes our solo experiences, because it can't be so directly connected to our immediate community, can kind of make us feel like we're isolated or no one's there, or, you know what I mean? And I do often feel like that's a specific place in the spiritual journey that I've seen a lot of people go through on their path, where God's just like, well, I don't need to run anyone. And I think 2020 was kind of that year for everyone to kind of take that space away just recollect. So I appreciate the ideas with the entrepreneurship too, because that's some stuff that we have to kind of think about as well. You're on TikTok as well, right? And you're also doing a lot of social media stuff.
Yeah, I am. And I just wanted to say, I love what you just said about that real quick. Like, a lot of people will say, well, that was my dark night of the soul, where like everybody abandoned me. But you have to remember that every time the bus stops, somebody's got to get off. And every new level you go on, not everybody can come with you. And I don't care if that's your blood relation. These are people you've known since you were a kid. It's whatever, the boss you've been working for 18 years. When you are ready to level up, some people will have to go, but they will be replaced with members of your soul tribe on the next level. Life does continue, but we have to be willing to do that work. What the universe rewards is not your skill, your ability, your talent, how cute you are. What they reward is integrity and character development. And that takes a long time, and we have to be willing to be comfortable with the discomfort. So but yeah, I do. I have TikTok. I started a couple months ago, and so that's TikTok at Ask Ivy. And so I put up like little clips there. People who maybe don't want to, digest the whole class that I have up on YouTube, or like I sell my classes up on my website. And those are like 2 hours long. And then the YouTube ones are like 45 minutes long. And the TikTok ones are 15 seconds to a minute. And so there are little tidbits to check out and see what sort of sparks what you resonate with. And then you can always go over to YouTube to get more. And then when you're ready to officially train, you go to the website.
Wow. That's awesome, guys. And that alone is a great way to start your entrepreneurship. Research and then kind of getting out there. We've also started our own TikTok channel. Little shameless plug there, but yeah, I do feel that all of us, I think the reason why I brought that up, wasn't only just to promote that, was, like just going from that isolation point to a much more like, okay, I'm ready to share my energy with people, whether it be teaching or whatever it may be. And I think in this day and age, obviously social media has become ridiculous, and I actually pulled back from it a couple weeks for sure. And I notice a lot more conscious thought sometimes. I think subconsciously we scroll, and sometimes we get connected to other people's energies and lives. And I think with the internet and the inception of the internet and how it's grown over time, we've become much more of the network that we've always thought. So the ideas of group consciousness have become a lot more apparent. And also this feeling of kind of omniscience. You can see everyone's lives and everyone's thing. I mean, it's too much sometimes, So I say that to say that it's sometimes hard to balance being in the world and learning how to be in the spiritual world, because I know some people that are, like you said, superheroes that are very lofty ideals and don't live, like you said, and basically on a amethyst crystal bed, or there's just people that are just like, like I don't want to talk to anything because it makes me feel, it reminds me of some scary movie I was, you know what I mean? A lot of it, again,
like their childhood. Like they're haunted.
That's where it comes from. That's exactly where it comes from.
Yeah.
That's exactly where it comes from. So yeah, how do you manage the rifts of when you're ready to be public as opposed to not? Because I know as an intuitive, we naturally are kind of inside type of people, or reflective type of people, or what do they call it? Empaths or introvert. That was the word I was looking for. Yeah. I don't believe in that word is totally out of the question now, but yeah.
Well, I think that one of the things that can help us all where we are right now with the technology is to understand how influenced and psychic and telepathic we actually are, how empathic we actually are over absorbing other people's stuff. Because I guarantee, even if someone listened to this whole thing and they were like, well, I don't know, I don't have any of that, I can't. Did you know when someone was going to call you or text you, or when someone sent you a message? Mm-hmm. Did you know who's going to pop up and send you a friend request on Facebook? How did you know that? The technology is not a barrier for energy work or healing work. And so this has also been a common misunderstanding over the years when people would say to me, how could you possibly give me a reading over the phone? I'm like, spirits traveled the cosmos to come here to talk to you. You think the phone is a disruption? But in these spiritualist communities, that's still what's being trained today, is that technology breaks things up. And that if people move or laugh or drink, they're cutting the cords, and that it's a difficult connection. It's not a difficult connection. It is too much connection. It is out of is flowing full force right now because of all the new medias and things that we have. So we have to understand that you know, we can work. A lot of people don't necessarily want to come out. I think the way you said it was almost like, you know, work for the public or be in the public eye or something. You know, we can do this through technology. If you feel that you are an introvert or you really don't want to have that kind of contact with people, if that's going to be overwhelming for you, there in this day and age, there's no reason you should have to.
Indeed.
You might be even more powerful from your safety zone, right from where you are. If you are going to get near people and have to deal with them face to face, it's going to drain you. Your healing abilities aren't as strong. Your connection to spirit isn't as strong. Stay where you are. That's okay. We can do that, but we need to make it more public that that is real.
Right. Yeah. That's why we're here. That's why you're here.
Exactly.
People are going to know. You know?
Right? Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah. This has been phenomenal. We did reach our hour mark. If you do want to keep talking about stuff, I'm definitely interested. But yeah, I probably chatted up. Caleb, did you want to have anything? I know I've been asking tons of questions.
Well, thanks for.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. No, I was just asking. I do have another question. But
no, you're fine. No, I think this entire episode has just been just so fascinating. As always, sometimes I like to sit back and just kind of be able to immerse myself into everything that's being told. I'm that kind of listener, being able to listen to you and then being able to replicate what I hear and being able to then kind of divulge into what we're talking about here. But just this entire thing, it's this full circle thing where it's just this identity. It's this constant developing of identity, of who we are, what we're here for, what we're doing. And it's these having these guides, it's these having, you know, we're not alone. We have somebody, something with us, around us. It's this concept, it's this fact that is, you know, allowing us to thrive. It's allowing us to continue on our journey, on our trek. And as you said, Ivy, with Tyreek and I, with what we're doing here, we are using our voices and to heal and to be able to discover new things. And to not only that, but I think you said this either right before the show started or at the beginning of the show, and I loved it. And it was the fact that this podcast is to connect people and to show people identity. And not necessarily say this is what you need to become or this is what you could become, but rather this is what someone is. This is something this is what identity is overall. Now go find it for yourself.
That's right.
And I never thought about it in that way.
This is what's unburied, and get back in touch with who you are. You know, I love those sayings when people put a post on Instagram or whatever, and it's always like, literally your spiritual journey is getting back to who you were. That was taken away, you know, and it's like, that's so true. That's so simple. We're just going back to what we already knew. You already know all this.
When I say back to source, you know, where did you come from before you got to your parents, that type of stuff. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that completely. What was I going to say?
Write it down.
Oh,
I just want to say one more thing real quick, playing off of what Caleb was mentioning. You know, I think that also people feel overwhelmed by this journey because we've been taught to be that way. Right? We've been taught to not think for ourselves, not think outside the box. Don't step out of line or you're going to get punished, you know. And again, we see that in school. We see that with parenting. We see that from the medical community. We see that in church. It's everywhere. You do not step out of line. You don't think outside the box. So people are sort of at a point right now where they're like deer in the headlights. We have the awakening going on. We had Floyd. We have all of the change with the presidency here in America. We got all this going on. The Great Awakening is happening. And people are like, oh, you know, what do I do? Well, don't forget, and this is something we have so lost touch with, and it just breaks my heart, that we come to Earth with a network, right? So you've got all your ancestors behind you, and then you have 5 guides that are appointed to you to watch over your relationship, your spiritual development, your mental well-being, you know, your money, your life contract, your protection, your past lives and how they incorporate, and you have 2 angels appointed to you. one who watches over, again, your mental and emotional well-being. This is huge. And another one who protects you. So you don't have, nobody comes here alone. And people are often like, well, I don't listen to my guides, so they must not like me. They don't care. If you fail, you fall on your face. You're only hurting yourself. They don't leave. They don't leave. And people don't understand that our guides are in here closer than our deceased loved ones, closer than our ancestors.
Indeed,
Our guides, 24 hours a day, are here to talk and communicate with you. When you don't listen all day, they're showing up in your dreams. So keep a dream journal. Start talking to them. Again, 10 minutes with your cup of coffee in the morning. Hey, guys, what's going on today? Are there any pitfalls I need to avoid? Are there any big opportunities? How can I be of service? What do I do? This is not hard. We're talking 10 minutes.
Right.
You know, and that alone will take you the rest of the way through.
Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. Yeah, man. So what I was gonna ask was to kind of do some more future stuff. What are your thoughts on this big idea of the awakening for the 21st, I believe? I don't know if you're familiar with like the astrology aspect of it. I don't know much about it, but I was curious. Do you have anything to add about it?
This month?
I believe it's this month. Yeah, there's supposed to be some Saturn, something conjunct. Some very big download. I'm not sure.
I think that's hitting, my chart today, because my astrologer, I had something in my date book for today. So I think that, it's going to depend on where it's hitting for everybody. But astrology, I respect them so much, right? Like the astrologer here at the Academy, she's been studying now for about 20 years. And I know many of them 5+ years, you know, and I can't even seem to retain what it is in the basic way. Sometimes the planets do talk to me and it does test out to be accurate, but I don't know that I'm confident in explaining it. However, I have her coming on. So I have on the 29th, our astrologer and the Reverend at, our Roots Revival church, Christina Del Rey, will be coming on. We're going to talk about the upcoming year for each zodiac sign. And so I'll be doing those horoscopes. She'll be doing it. She's going to talk about all the planetary shifts that go on in 2021. And I'm sure she's going to talk about that because Saturn is huge. Saturn and Pluto, these are big transitions. Mm-hmm. I know she said repeatedly she wants to do this show on the 29th to make sure people are prepped for 2021 because we are looking at transition everywhere on a personal level, as an awakening, as a culture, as like a universal worldwide transition. And I know that we're also supposed to see the wealth go from the hands of power and control and the wealthy. The head becomes the tail and the tail becomes the head. It's going to transition out and down to, the light workers, the poor, those that have been marginalized. And so everything's about to shift. So I would get your date books and your calendars and take some notes. But yeah, I am all about it. 2021 is feeling very intense.
Indeed. Yeah, this new moon that just passed was very interesting as well. Everybody was, talking about that and the new intentions that are being set. So, yeah, it's going to be a big year. It seems like a long year, but also seems like it was quite a blur. So, I'm excited. I'm super excited, and I appreciate you so much. We have, I think we have some comments, Caleb, before we leave. Let's see. Kaylee says, yes, Jupiter and Saturn are going to align for the first time in over 600 years, and the vibrations they're going to put out are supposed to be massive. All right, awesome. So everybody take a look at that.
Yeah.
Take a look at that. Someone commented in my live, but not on the chat, and they said, just thank you, Tyreek, Caleb, and Ivy for this production. Miss Rivera has been very enlightening. So shout out to that too.
Thank you.
We actually had another little thing earlier by Mariah saying that this is an amazing podcast and very informative and that they really appreciate this. So awesome. Thank you, Mariah, for that. That means the world, I think, for all three of us. So
yeah. Navek, also who was on our show once. Mm-hmm. He gave us some love, Imani. So shout out to everybody out there. I know I'm giving Reverend Rivera a little chance to relax because she's been talking the whole time. But yeah, I just appreciate everyone. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for chatting with us. We'll definitely have her on again if she is willing to have us when she starts to launch some new stuff as well. yeah, that's. I have tons of questions, but I think that we've covered so much involved with identity. I usually Caleb does a summation, which I think he did earlier. But yeah, man, I had a good time, Caleb. Ms. Rivera, this has been super awesome in the sense of really finding out an idea of what identity means to you. And it's funny that you're in the process of making people identify with themselves. And not many people think about that as a service. And I guess we're kind of on that path as well. So kudos to everybody on this new path. Definitely keep your ears and your spiritual eyes open for all the things that are coming up. So
yeah, I'm so grateful to you guys. When I saw the invite to come on, I was like, this is brilliant. This is where everybody needs to be right now. It's about being with yourself. It's about being introspective. It's about figuring out what's going on with you. And whether we like it or not, this pandemic has put us all in a big fat timeout. And when you are in a big fat timeout, you have to get comfortable with you. And so it is just right on time. It's very powerful, on fire. I love it. You guys just have this great energy. And I think this is, going to reach so many people. Just huge things coming up for you. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, I take your word for it if you can feel it. So
right.
Yep, Tyreek and I were talking about it earlier, for sure.
Right, indeed. Baby kittens, right? Nobody's gonna know what that means.
Own them, you're the one.
We know.
That's right. That's right.
But I'm severely allergic to cats.
I think we're remote.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for everyone, as always, for tuning in, for listening, watching the Identity Podcast, brought to you by Find Your ID NYC. Once again, I'm your co-host, Caleb. It's an honor. It really is. It's such an honor to host the show every single week, to be able to do it throughout this portion of time in 2020, this crazy year 2020. 2021 is going to be a big year, I think, for everything, and I'm so ready to experience everything that is coming forth, and I'm so grateful to know that I get to do it with this guy right here, my fellow lovely co-host.
We met so many interesting people along the way. I think we have to still do that big jambalaya episode with everybody involved, so that should be fun.
I'm working hard.
Yeah.
The organizer is working hard. Virgos.
Yes, indeed, Virgos.
Well, thanks as always, Tyreek, for being here and doing the show with me. But thank you, Ivy, for everything, for teaching us so many things, for adding another lens to carry throughout my walk of life, and to just wow, this has been brilliant. I feel like I have learned so much, and I feel like I have simply been able to change my perspective on so many things just in this hour and 20 minutes that we've been on live here. So thank you. Seriously, thank you so much.
Thank you. Absolutely. All right, you guys. Stay in touch. We're a tribe.
Sure. Yeah, if there's anything else you want to jump in on or tell us, I think you kind of told us about some future stuff that you're doing when the church opens up and stuff. Any questions for us? Normally we ask our guests, it's something we've been doing during our On Religion series, like any misconceptions that you've normally had or anything but I kind of asked that with the blasphemy thing. But we normally just ask, like, any questions that you may have for us or the audience or anything, just before we part.
I don't think so. I think that, this has just been a long time coming, and I understand just the way that you guys, again, I'm just grateful the way that you're coming at this from so many different angles. Like, it's all the same theme, but from so many different angles. And I think that's what it's all about right now, is that we be more open-minded. We all need to stop trying to categorize ourselves. And you guys have found this outlet for people. It's a ministry, and I think it's beautiful. I'm just looking forward to watching it grow, and I'm here, when you need me, or if you want to invite me back, I would be happy to join in. And I'm grateful for everyone who tuned in today also and listened with an open mind and an open heart.
Awesome.
That's big.
Well, go, Tyreek.
No. I'm speechless. That was the speechless face.
Well, thank you once again, Ivy. That really does mean the world to us. And don't forget to go follow her on Instagram at Ivy Rivera Psychic Medium. And you can check out her website by the same name, but just add in the .com. And you can check out her YouTube page at Ask Ivy, and her TikTok also at Ask Ivy. And don't forget to check out our TikTok page. You can follow us at The Identity Podcast. Pretty cool stuff. So you have 2 TikTok pages you need to follow. Ask Ivy and Identity
And these
Podcast.
shirts.
And don't forget to get those shirts. Pretty great stuff. Well, as always, you have been listening to the Identity Podcast, brought to you by Find Your ID NYC. Don't forget to go ahead and like us on Facebook, and go ahead and check us out on Instagram as well by the same name. And you can check our YouTube page at The X Shows. Don't forget to check out the Identity Podcast on Apple, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, any podcast app out there. We're on it. I can promise you that. Down below, pretty cool stuff. Don't forget, next week, 2 days before Christmas, exciting stuff. We're getting into Buddhism next week. Really happy to have James Lynch on the show. Cannot wait as we continue our On Religion series as we wrap up 2020. What? Oof. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. But
it needs Zen Buddhism now.
Exactly.
But walk away like a mandala. Anyway.
Well, it's I'm very excited for next week's show, and thank you again, Ivy. It's been an honor. Thank you, everyone, as always, for tuning into the Identity Podcast. We will catch you next week. It's been great. Stay tuned for the podcast link tomorrow. Have a good one.